So welcome to our second community gathering to talk about the construction project here at Glenview Elementary. I'm the principal. My name is Chelsea Toller. The logistics, restrooms for adults. Yes, you use adult restrooms when you're in school. You go out this main door here to the left, and the white cabinet. At the end of the white cabinet is the adult restroom. And just help yourself some food. Make sure you sign in. If you're going to be speaking, there's a speaker's card in the back with this lid that's back there. A few things just to let you know a little bit about some of the folks that are here tonight. The panel will introduce themselves in a little bit. They come our core committee. So the core committee, we have Mr. Ross, a third grade teacher at Glenview, Mr. Miller, another third grade teacher at Glenview, Ms. Brado, in the back, special day class teacher for our parent students. We have some parents on our committee. We have Pat has kindergartner, Steve, one fourth grader, and Stoicho has a kindergartner as well. And Ms. Ursula just walked in, and Jennifer Mann in the back, also parents of Glenview students who are on our core committee that will be helping us to design the school as we go forward. I want to remind everyone that we are in a school, and I know that many of us have passionate feelings about school change and building change. We only have 3 rules here at Glenview: be safe, respectful, and responsible. And we invite you to honor our 3 rules while you're here at our school. I also invite, it's always wonderful to see so many people coming into our school building. Some of you I know haven't been here in many, many years. You introduced yourselves as former students. I invite you to become involved in our community. So a lot of times people come out when they're concerned about a building or they're concerned about a specific project. We actually have tons of needs in our school every single day, from help in the library to fundraising to volunteering to support students. As you know, public schools are sorely in need of help. And we encourage you to contact either me or our PTA president, both of which are available on our website, and get involved not only tonight with your passion you may feel about building and construction, but also in support of public schools every day. And there's lots of ways to make that happen based on what your interest is. I invite you to become more part of our school. I'm going to turn it over now to Will Nibby, who's our project manager for the construction project. He is also a Glenview resident and a Glenview parent of a fabulous first grader and an upcoming kindergartner.
So I wanted to just speak briefly and make you guys aware of some of the things that we were able to accomplish since the last meeting. We had a meeting in February on the 19th, and one of the expectations for that meeting is that we would develop and circulate a monthly newsletter. So we had the circulation of volume 1 that was posted on March 7th. We've established a project-specific website at the Oakland Unified School District's website for any and all information about the project. We also were able to establish a communication website for anybody that was interested in reaching out to the meeting. We're using that site for folks that were interested in becoming part of the core committee. We've since included 2 members to that group, and we will be reaching out once more for people that are interested in becoming part of the interim housing core committee. So we have new core committee member Rich Johnson in the room. To the back. And then another committee member is actually a neighbor, Eric Monsino. Eric, are you sitting in the front? So those are our 2 newest members of the core committee. So again, we are inviting people who are interested, are committed and dedicated to being involved in the process, being solution-oriented, problem solvers, and again, I'll have to stress committed. We will have the first meeting for the interim housing student on April 9th. I believe it will be at 4:30. 4:30. So 4:30 weekly meeting and 4:07 is regular portable in that regard. I think that was all of the outshare that I wanted to do, just kind of give people an idea of what we've done since the last meeting. But again, we do have a wonderful website that Troy helped to put together, and we were able to basically roll out all of the information that we
Thanks, Will. I'd also like to thank everyone who came out today on a weekday evening. I'm sure this is not your preferred use of time. And I'd also like to be real about acknowledging that this issue is an important and weighty one, and also one that has been a source at times of conflict and tension. And while that can be a strain, it's actually encouraging for me because I much prefer people who are enthusiastic about the democratic process, who are engaged and have a really vital interest in nurturing what's already a great school and ensuring that we protect what's good about it while making it better. So I appreciate your contribution, not just in attending today, but in the dialogue up to this point. We want to cultivate that enthusiasm by providing more information, by acknowledging and addressing some of the missteps that have occurred to this point, and making sure people have a common understanding of our goals for this process. And hopefully we can use that as a foundation to come together to respect the community while also creating the best possible environment that we can for Glenview students. And to help that process, there are a number of people here with me today. Once I'm finished speaking, the Director of Facilities for OUSD, Tadashi Nakadagawa, will talk about some of the process that got us to this point, as well as how we will move forward. He'll outline all the steps, including our next community meeting, which will be on Thursday, May 1st at 5:30 p.m. I hope you can find it in your heart to attend yet another meeting. And after Tadashi gets up and he speaks, we will have members of the Oakland Heritage Alliance. I don't know exactly what they're saying, but I assume they will offer some remarks on the preservationist viewpoint and that perspective. Following that, we will have the architects from the firm that we're working with, HKIT, talk about some of the design principles and what they're trying to accomplish with the district's goal of creating 21st century learning environments that really support modern learning conditions that will prepare kids for the challenges of the 21st century. After that, there will be opportunities for public comment. We will come around and collect the speaker cards and read from those cards, present those questions to the panelists, and allow them to answer it. That's an opportunity for those of you who may not feel comfortable stepping up to the mic to have your opinions expressed or your questions asked. Then following that session, we'll have another 30-minute period where it will be open comment and people will line up before the mics and ask questions or make statements here before the audience. So thanks again to everyone for coming, and Tadashi, if you'd like to lead into your presentation.
Thank you, Troy, and I also would like to thank you all for coming out here. It is encouraging to have a vibrant involvement in our projects, and I think it helps us make better schools in the end run. I just want to give a little context to where this project is in the school district's efforts to improve our facilities district-wide. Before I actually get to the slide, I just want to talk about the OUSD actually has close to 6 million square feet of buildings in Oakland, and that's on 525 acres. Glenview is 2.9 acres and approximately 43,000 square feet, just to sort of frame where we are in the city here. And then just to talk a little bit about the recent history of the facilities department involvement in this facility. We first started working in, I'll call the modern area, on this site in 1997. That's when we installed that elevator tower on La Cresta and made other access improvements, renovated the restrooms. It's what we call a minimal modernization because at that time we didn't have much local bond funds to supplement the state money that was available at that time. The next major event from the facilities department point of view was in 2004 when we did our first master plan, and that identified all the deficiencies at the site at the time. That led to Glenview being identified as a priority project in the Measure B bond, which passed in 2006. And then we have the next major project is being the playground improvement project that was completed in 2010. That completed access compliance work to get from this main building platform down to the lower yard, and the improvements on the lower yard, some of which were also parent-sponsored. Then we have the portable repair project that happened the next summer, and we were finally able to get a design budget approved by board out of the Measure B allocation, and that's when we hired HKIT architects to start working on the master plan. So that leads us up to the passage of Measure J and the master plan that HKIT completed last year. So that's just a summary of the history, and I'd now like to talk about how some of that came about. So the current capital program is grounded in three major documents, and that is the strategic plan of the district, which was adopted by the board in 2011. And out of that, we developed the facilities master plan that we redid in 2012, and then that was used to develop the Measure J bond election in 2012. So these are what we consider the foundational documents that drive our facilities program for the next few years. Out of those documents, next slide please, we have the major goals that have been formed by consensus of the board and the school district as a whole. And just to talk a little bit about the current Measure J bond is for $475 million, and that's out of an identified need of $1.5 billion. So we have only about a third of the money that we really need to do the improvements that we need to do district-wide. One of the main tenets of the district strategic plan is a full-service community school district, and that means bringing in community services and community access to our schools in a much more intensive way than we currently are able to do, in such ways of being able to open community meeting rooms or the school library for community access during non-school hours, or have easier access to assembly rooms like auditoriums for other uses as well, and to not only improve the access, but access in both the scheduling sense, but access in access compliance. So just to point out that this is a very difficult site from an access compliance point of view, and does not meet current standards from the Department of State Architects' point of view of equal facilitation. The elevator that's on La Cresta is what's considered a secondary access and would not fly when we go back to the state to get the new project approved. The next two items, sustainability and resource reduction, are elements that the board has endorsed as a board policy to drive the district forward and improve our energy efficiency and operational efficiency and reduce our impact on the environment. And seismic safety is an element of the Measure J bond, and the basic criteria is to look at the seismic safety of those facilities which we're doing other major projects of. And I think at the last meeting we reviewed a little bit about the history of this site in regards to the state AB 300 list, and how, because it's on that list, we're required to do a more intensive evaluation, and that's part of what's driving this project. The other part that I'd like to talk about is how we're making a big effort to improve nutrition in the entire district. We have a new central kitchen project that's going ahead, and as part of that project, we need new kitchens at each of the schools to support the improved food that's coming out of that central kitchen, because without the new site kitchens, we're not going to be able to serve the quality food that we want to be able to support. And then lastly, I want to touch on technology upgrades, which are increasingly required to support the learning and the curriculum that the district is required to support both by the state and the federal government. Next slide, please. So out of that, those goals, we have started to develop some tools for implementation. One of those tools being the design guidelines, and we're going to be using these design guidelines to drive all of our projects under our current capital program and moving forward. And those basic tenets of those design guidelines are building flexible classroom configurations, having standards for furniture and equipment, making sure that we're putting in enough technology infrastructure, having adequate facilities that support future flexibility, supporting the STEM technology curriculum, and doing a better job of including and not only including but mainstreaming wherever possible the programs for exceptional children. The one piece of that design guidelines that I would want to point out, and I think the architects might be touching on a little later, next slide please, is our prototype for a 21st century classroom. And this is just giving the basic parameters of, or the basic elements that we see as being necessary to include in any renovated or replacement classroom that we work on from now on. So I'd also then like to talk about just some recent examples of what we have been doing and the type of work that we've been putting in place. The two sites here are the Cox Elementary School site, which houses our Reach Academy, and Chabot Elementary. These are two new classroom buildings. These are both additions at existing facilities. And I just want to point out the green features and sustainability features that are included on these. You can see on the Cox project the green roof and the bioswale. These are elements to help reduce water runoff and the storm sewer overload, and to actually improve the temperature in the building that the green roof is on. And so that helps to reduce the impact of that building. This particular green roof was also designed to be viewable from the second floor hallway, so that it's actually used as a teaching element in the school. There's actually a tile mural that the kids made inside that hallway that overlooks that green roof that the teachers regularly use as a teaching element. The Chabot Elementary School, as you see there, was the first certified green school in the state, and one of the first to access their matching funds available for sustainable projects. And finally, I'd like to talk a little bit about a project we just completed this last summer. That's Simmons Modernization, where we put in a new career tech building for life sciences, and just to show an example of how we have been able to put in a new building that harmonizes with the existing building. So in the upper picture, you have the old classroom building on the right, and on the lower picture, you have our new life sciences building. So then, just to conclude, I'm going to talk about sort of like where we are and moving forward. Just a very quick summary. This is the first three dates are the community meeting we had last last month, the one we're having now, and the one we're going to have on May 1st. The next step after that is a superintendent recommendation for board approval of the project, and we're then projecting a board action date on the project of May 28th. That would then lead into a design approval and bidding phase, which will last approximately 1.5 years, and a construction phase that lasts approximately 2 years. The point I want to make here is that this design approval and bidding phase and the construction phase are both very similar regardless of whether renovation or replacement is chosen. So I just want to make sure that people understand that even if they choose renovation over replacement, the project will last at least as long as the replacement project lasts, and therefore the displacement of the school and displacement of the students and that impact is just as long. So that leads us finally into hopefully being able to move into the new or renovated Glenview in fall of 2018. So I hope that was illustrative of where we came from and how we got here. In closing, I just want to emphasize the district's priority and primary goal is to provide healthy school environments, productive school environments that have the new technology needed to educate our kids for the 21st century, and that also with the full service community schools concept nurtures our children in the best way, as well as providing a safe and healthy environment. So thank you for that, and with that I would like to turn it over to the Heritage Alliance. So is there somebody from Heritage Alliance? Yeah, thank you. All right, thank you.
I have brought enough handouts for probably 1 or 2 people. I didn't know how big a group we would have, but I did bring some very simple handouts, and if you don't get one and you want one, I will post these and let people know how to get them. I'm Naomi Schiff. I'm on the board of Oakland Heritage Alliance, which is a local historic preservation group. I am the parent of a proud Oakland Unified School District graduate who did go on to college, and I'm also a Measure J voter. And what we would like to do is join our presentation with a little bit more architecturally sophisticated presentation from the Art Deco Society of California. Their preservation director, H. Lynn Harrison, is here with me, and he is an architect, which I am not. But before I go there, I just want to say a couple of things about this little handout. The top 3 pictures are, I just think, of interest because they're prominent buildings produced by the architect who designed the remodel that we see today at this school, William H. Corlett, quite a well-known architect. The second group of 3 just shows some local schools from the 1930s, kind of the same group that this school is a member of. There's one from San Francisco, one from Oakland, and one from Piedmont. And the last little group of photos are adaptive reuses in Oakland, and that's the main quick thing I want to talk about. The adaptive reuses that I'm showing are Whole Foods down on Bay Place, the Fox Oakland Theater, which, as you may know, has a charter school that was added onto it, and the Broadway building, also known as the Lionel J. Wilson building in downtown Oakland, which also adjoins a brand new building. It was very damaged in the earthquake, and actually the new building helped to hold it up. What is adaptive reuse? You know, people think of historic preservation as a thing where we go, no, 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 you can't knock it down, and moreover, you have to preserve every little thing about it, even the overstuffed couch that you got from your grandmother that you hate. And our group is a little more forward-thinking than that. After all, many of us have children in the Oakland Unified School District, too. So there are different levels of historic preservation, and sometimes you keep every darn stick of some cute little house, and that's great. And then sometimes you can't do that. That's what we call adaptive reuse. That is, reusing the historic fabric, but making it work for modern purposes, adding on to it if you have to, maybe using a new building to hold up an old one, maintaining elements of the historic architecture that are important, either because they contribute to the neighborhood and the sense of place, because the architect or the history of the building are important, because the materials in the building are pretty darn good, and lastly, because it's the greener thing to do. In talking about green building and environmentalism, something to remember is that when you build a brand new building, you're using new materials, but you're also using all the new energy to bring the new materials and to bring the people and to build all the components that go into it. And when you are demolishing an old building, you're throwing things away. So one of the interesting things about historic preservation is that it is not in conflict with green building. It can be green building. And this seems like it might be, in this project, an opportunity to view it that way and to use it that way. So now I'm going to turn this over to H. Lynn Harrison from the Art Deco Society. Thank you.
Thank you. As she said, I'm H. Lynn Harrison. I am the Preservation Director of the Art Deco Society. Is that better? Can you see me? Of the Art Deco Society of California. As a nonprofit group, in the past 30-plus years, we have amassed an amazing resource of knowledge, and we are consulted on a regular basis by municipalities, by building departments and planning departments. We get questions not only within the U.S., but also in the larger international Art Deco community. So we have some recognized expertise in this era, the 20s and 30s. First of all, I'd like to thank the Oakland Unified School District for allowing us to come here and make some points. They have a very difficult task. And I'd also like to dispel the idea that there are two factions vehemently opposed to each other at battle across the line drawn in the sand. That's not really the case. The stereotypes of the slash and burn versus the sentimental heart in your sleeve, savory little doily and stick and brick are unrealistic. I come to this as a practicing architect. I have a career of 40 years working with buildings such as this. In fact, in our group, we have TJ Toohey is here tonight, a wonderful local architect, small office here in Oakland, who has worked on renovating the Alameda County Courthouse, and for which they won an award. That building was incidentally designed by Will Corlett, the same architect who designed this building. He's very knowledgeable on the practical aspects of every conceivable type of issue that would come up in a program like this. So I'm going to speak to some of the practical issues here. Why would this building be important? What makes this architecturally or culturally significant? First of all, the 30s was, in American architecture, a high point, both in design and construction. We are a relatively new country. We just have a couple of centuries. We don't have a Tang dynasty or an Italian Renaissance to sit back on. And so when the Depression came up, fortunately, due to the leadership of Roosevelt, unemployed mothers and fathers with kids like you guys, and bricklayers and carpenters and plasterers and even architects were put to work. And their generation was trained and their ethics were set up. I think a lot of us in this room remember our grandparents of that era. They put their heart and soul into constructions like this. The level of quality, say for example, of poured concrete in the 30s is superb. The shell of this building is poured concrete. This is from the 1938 renovation by Will Corlett. The architecture, the quality of the design is something that as a limited phase or a time period and a stylistic event has been unequaled in quality since then. You know, this is the era that gave us such brilliant and beautiful icons of American imagery. Hoover Dam, the Golden Gate Bridge, the Oakland Bay Bridge, the Paramount Theater, the Alameda County Courthouse. These things are brilliant. They're beautifully designed. They're functional. They still serve all of the function that they originally set out to do. And so one of the things that is important in preserving something is to preserve what is significant. Is this school significant? It's designed by Will Corlett. And as Naomi so wonderfully pointed out, the work of Will Corlett is not slipshod in the slightest. There's an entire block of storefronts done in the 1920s near the Paramount, which has been designated as an historic area. And this is rare, not just one building or two, but the whole thing is an historic district. And she mentioned several of the buildings, the beautiful buildings on the campus of the Berkeley High School. This building, he did Fremont High School. A lot of wonderful things. So we're talking about a major talent at a major high point in American architecture. And let's get down to brass tacks. What's important to save here? Naomi so beautifully said, we don't want to save everything. You know, that's not the purpose of preservation efforts. What do we want to save? If I had to pick one feature of this entire building that's worth saving, it's the exterior facade, the front elevations of this building, especially the ones that face these two streets. Its fenestration, the windows, the proportion, and the massing, how it sits on the site, and its incredible detailing. Those are what I would consider cultural treasures. They should be saved. And there are a few things. The detailing up here is very nice. If it were to be replaced or substituted with something else, it's not the end of life. They're nice, but the loss of this building in the community would be a major cultural loss. And conversely, what would we save? Absolutely no musty boiler rooms, no leaky plumbing. We need new systems throughout this whole building: electrical, plumbing, mechanical. It needs a seismic upgrade. It wouldn't hurt my feelings in the slightest if a plan were devised where we could save the concrete shell of this building, got everything on the inside, and build new construction to satisfy the shortfall on spatial requirements. And the proposed plans for which budgets have been set up do pretty much that. They have new construction. You have a wonderful amount of square footage back here. All of this tarmac area is prime location for a new annex. And does this annex have to be built in a style matching Will Corlett's Art Deco detailing? Absolutely not. In fact, it shouldn't be. It should be done as a contemporary design in materials and in detailing that flatter and support and do not overwhelm an existing building that's saved. I see something here. I can imagine a good solution. And a good solution would be exactly that. I'm a practical guy. I think there are compromises where we could get everything that people who are attached for whatever reasons, preservationists, neighbors, people concerned about their property values, I think we could satisfy all of those and provide, and I quote Troy Flynn on this, he's exactly right. The goal that everyone should have here is to create the best available environment possible for our students, for our young people. And so I think we should be united in that. I see the possibility of this being an award-winning project. I can see the Oakland Unified School District setting precedent in California and even on a national basis. They have some precedent already for salvaging other buildings and supporting them with new construction. And the difference between a prosaic project or a simplistic project, path of least resistance. And a good solution is imagination, human ingenuity. It doesn't cost any more. The figures that we've been presented show that to save this building, to refurbish, to upgrade it, is approximately $6 million less than tearing it down and building new. And so if the only difference there is human imagination and invention, I say, and I give this challenge to all of us, to the Oakland School District, who works very hard, and to everyone sitting here, give a gift to these children. Give them something that could be the biggest life lesson they could ever have. Tell them how to skin a cat. There are more than one ways to skin a cat. Thank you.
So before we go into our next presentation, I just wanted to recognize former school board director and also council member for this district, Noel Gaio. Noel, did you want to make any remarks, or?
No, not really.
Okay.
Since Elton brought it up, one of my fans. I just want to, I think that the gentleman that spoke before me made some very interesting remarks. We want the best for our children and for their future. And something that perhaps will last here the next 300 years. I was here when Abraham Lincoln built this school, and it's still standing. But no, the reality is I just want to thank you. It's a great challenge, but I think we have to think, what is the best for our children to stay competitive when it comes to education and in the world market? And that's the reality of their future. Their future is a lot different than mine is, or was. And so I think we have to remember that fact. And it did take us a long time to get to this level. Believe me, I was here in 1999. And it was a struggle, it was a fight. Many of you parents, other parents were here. And they challenged us to build a better playground area, cafeteria, meeting rooms, and as well as build a school that all our kids could attend. Not only then, but in the long future. I raised 4 children in the Oakland Public Schools. 3 graduated from Oakland High School. My son graduated from Fremont High School, and they graduated from Stanford and Cal Berkeley. So you have an opportunity to provide the best education, the best facility that'll take your kids to be able to compete for all the kids that are at Stanford today, and most of a good number of those kids at Stanford are from out of this country. So I think that we have those opportunities for that, and you only get one chance at it. But I do want to say that the parents that were here before invested a great deal of time and energy and Hugh knows this because he was here, to get us to this level of the investment, because getting the district to set aside $40 million to rebuild Glenview was a challenge. Getting the district to rebuild Fremont High School at a tune of $80 million was a challenge, and it was not just one-year effort. It took us quite a number of years to get to this level. So, I wish you well. I support what you're doing. And I do agree that our kids deserve the best for their future, because I'm one step away from being in heaven. And I just want to recognize that our kids deserve the best. Thank you.
So next, the architects from HKIT are going to talk a little bit more about those type of environments we're striving to create.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. It's just a pleasure to be here, and it's great to see how many people actually care about the schools. We're an Oakland firm, and our favorite thing is to design for the city of Oakland, to be involved, and we pride ourselves in being good listeners and good designers, so it's just an absolute pleasure to be here. And I applaud the school district and the community for passing a bond and now being in the process of implementing it. But let me talk to you a little bit about the process that we've been through and where we are. So I need the next slide when it's ready. I didn't know I was killing time just then, so. That isn't what the school is going to look like, by the way. Okay, so I'm ready for the next slide. Thank you. So when we were asked to join the school to look at this, we were given a couple of objectives. And the first one was to really completely assess the feasibility of modernizing the existing building, including looking at what needed to be done seismically, and replace the existing portables, which everybody agrees needs to go, or to look at building all new construction. So we were asked to be very neutral and look at both of these options. Of course, we were asked to respond to the AB 300, as Tadashi has mentioned. This building is on that list, and we do need to seismically upgrade or replace this building. And then, really importantly to us and to everybody here, we want to meet the district standards for a 21st century learning environment and build in whatever fashion the most high quality neighborhood school that we can. Next slide. So the steps we took were to engage with the district, with site staff, parents, and students. And as Tadashi mentioned, this was about a year-long process. And while we were doing this, the person that works with me, Jeff Evans, who's over here, was evaluating existing conditions. And when we did that, we brought on a series of consultants. So we have structural engineers, electrical, mechanical engineers. So a lot of know-how and expertise went into looking at existing conditions. We did look to see if there were any historic listings, and we did not find any. We went ahead and developed a building program. Those are the parts that need to go into the school. We worked with our core committee and students even to create a vision for the campus. And then we developed a couple of plan options. And those options we vetted with the people that were on the core committee. And there are a series of site plans and sort of the look at where things would go on the site. That was really important because in the end we narrowed it down to two options. One is remodel and renovate the existing and do an addition, and the other is all new. And we wanted to be very honest and transparent about what those choices were and what they would cost. And then we were charged to provide a recommendation. So quickly, there was a lot of input from district staff and school site and students and parents. We met a number of times. Next slide. As I mentioned, we did a bunch of existing conditions analysis, including we had some fun with the students who have, if you could see this slide, it's really great. They say, cross out the radiators because they don't work. So like everybody's mentioned, we have to change the infrastructure of this school no matter what we do. But we're also looking for classrooms that are the right size, administrative spaces that are the right size, and then looking at various deficiencies, making sure classrooms are supporting technology and create flexible learning environments. And we went through next a visioning process, and we'll just a moment on that. As one of the students says, we have a great school, but there's always somebody that would like a pool, but he would also like better heating and cooling. Okay, next slide. So the question gets asked, and it gets bantered around a lot, what is a 21st century learning environment? Well, these, along with the district, these are the things that we think about when we're really imagining what this school can be. We want to support the whole child. We want to make sure we're providing a safe and nurturing environment, one that makes it easier to teach and learn. We're here for the students, but we're here for the staff as well. They're putting their heart and soul into this. We want to team with the district to promote a healthy lifestyle, whether it's outdoor play or good social interaction or nutrition, and then continue to build community. As you've just said, I mean, we're looking to have more relationship with the community and more partnership with the community. So anything we can do to support that, we want to be a part of. And we want this to remain and be distinctly Glenview. So just a few points in terms of supporting the whole child. We know that children learn differently. We know that there are different ways and methodologies of teaching, group activity, individual activity. We want to have places to support services. We want outdoor play and a really strong facility for performing in visual arts. Next. We want to make sure it's a safe and nurturing environment. I mean, one of the most issues here at this school is to create the most seismically safe structure that we can. We want to make sure we have a welcoming and controlled entry. There's been a lot of discussion about where the play yard goes, whether it should remain at the front of the school or if we want to move that activity to a controlled courtyard. Next slide. Just an image of a classroom with natural lighting, great indoor air quality, technology, flexible furnishings. This happens to be from the Glenview School. Next slide. Promoting a healthy lifestyle. Schools are a safe haven for our children, and we want to make sure this is a healthy building that provides all sorts of activities and good, healthy buildings that support those things. And we love the garden stays, and it's great to team this, not only having a garden here, but team with the district on the new nutrition programs and the commissary. Went to a great presentation on that and how food will be delivered to this school site in a way that is much more nutritious and environmentally friendly. So if you don't know much about it, it's really an amazing project, and it's coming your way. Next, in terms of building community, the school district is very, very open in terms of having, shared use of space, the playground, spaces such as this, and just a great place for families to meet and gather. And then being distinctly Glenview. There is a strong school identity here, and we want to promote that and continue it. A lot of that has to do with the community connection, parent participation, and the arts program. So all those things are going to be taken into account as we develop the project and move forward. There are just a few images of the school. I mean, one of the things I found as I visit schools all over the Bay Area is the most vibrant part of so many schools, and like you see in the corridor here, is the students' art. So a lot of what we do, especially in classrooms, really becomes an expression of the students themselves and their instructors. So how do we go about supporting the 21st century learning? We have two images for you to look at in the next slide. The first one is the option of keeping the existing buildings and then doing a series of additions to support all of the program area. So this is a viable solution. We've taken a really hard look at it, and I think there's a way to make that work. And the second slide is an all-new school. You'll see similarities but differences. We think the massing of the existing building is quite good, but there are pieces we think we would move around to make a better school, better zoning. But we'll get into a little detail. This is an image of what the new school could look like. Now again, this is a concept, and it isn't a final design. We're in concept stage where we're looking at massing and blocking so we know if a project will fit on the site. So next scheme. So this is the renovation addition scheme. This is the existing building is in the pale yellow, and the brighter yellow would be the addition. So along the north edge of the side there, you see it's a two-story block to add enough classrooms to the space. So the other thing that I think is worth noting is the multi-stays where it is, and we add a kitchen and a stage. And it's a little hard to see from here, but we need to add some elevators and lifts in the project to create more accessibility throughout the building. Next slide. This just shows some of the issues in terms of access to the site. That's in red. That would be pedestrian access. And then the blue indicates where service vehicles would need to come to service the kitchen itself. This, in the beige, is the multi-use. The blue you can see sprinkled around some of the administrative spaces. We're using, next slide, shows where we're placing the kindergartens within the existing framework of the building. Next slide. And then building a new library interior to the building at the core. This shows existing outdoor areas that would remain. And just two more slides. The lower level remains as is with classroom space, and then the upper level becomes all classroom space. Okay, next slide. So the next slide shows a concept for an all-new school. You can see massing-wise, it's rather similar, although One thought is that we push the building a little bit forward in order to maximize the controlled courtyard area at the west side of the site. This shows the access points. The blue indicates that that's where service vehicles would come into the site. They could stop right there because that is where the kitchen is, so service stays outside of the play zone. Then the red indicates where the access point would be. Brown is where we're proposing the new multi-use building would be, so it's a one-story structure to the north of the site. The blue is the admin, and the orange that just came up is kindergarten. And I was interested when I watched Tadashi show the slide of the green roof, because that is one of the visioning pieces, would be to put a green roof on this kindergarten wing and look down on it. So it's a possibility. We have to think about how we protect, how we do drainage off of that. But I think that's would be quite interesting, and the site people were quite interested in that. So next slide. And then the library is right on the side of the porch, so it becomes very much a community asset at the front porch of the school. You can see where the outdoor areas are, and a few more slides. Downstairs at the lower level would have direct access to the street and be classroom space, and then on the level above, next slide, would be the second floor, so massing remains quite similar. All right. We've been asked to provide pros and cons, and I'm sure this will be debated, but we are going to take a stab at it. So we're going to talk about the renovation addition option. As is pointed out, the construction cost is a little over $22 million, and it is the lesser cost option. And so that is something that we're sharing transparently. It will cost a little bit less to build, at least in terms of initial construction costs. The other thing that I think is a positive for many people is it retains the existing facade. So we see those, I'm sorry? Oh, I'm not, okay, sorry. It retains the existing facade. Let me turn my page. It's hard to read backwards and talk into the mic. All right. So in this scheme, we think some of the things that are concerns are undersized classrooms, because the existing building does not have all... Oh. Okay. Thank you. The existing building does not have standard size classrooms throughout. So there would be, the new building would have standard size classrooms, but the existing would not. There are site circulation issues and problems with some of the continuity within the building. We've talked about accessibility. Accessibility is much harder to achieve with the existing building. I mean, we will have to meet accessibility standards, but it is difficult to achieve equal facilitation. And I think we'll need at least 2 elevators and a couple of lifts and ramps. The seismic upgrade will be very robust, but it is designed to provide safety and safe exiting of the building in a catastrophic event, but is not designed to the standard to necessarily preserve the property. So that is a consideration. From a campus zoning issue, we see the administration will be split. We're a little concerned about the way access would be handled to the kitchen. Multi-use gets another addition, which makes it less contiguous with the play yard. Libraries at the interior court and less of a public place. And the kindergarten remains at the front of the campus versus at the rear of the campus.
Can I ask you a quick question? What does it mean when you say it would not likely to preserve property? I want my structural engineer to answer this, but it is not designed to current standards to protect the structure fully. So are you saying then that if we were to, under these conditions, that there's the possibility that this would not be able to sustain the building as it is in the case of an earthquake?
I am going to ask to hold that question for now, if I can.
Okay.
And I think there will be question and answer, so I would like to have help answering those questions. But thank you.
Be able to answer that if you're meeting modern seismic code, neither scheme will necessarily preserve the building so it won't fall and kill anyone.
Okay, let me continue on. I do have a few more comments to make. So on the renovation addition scheme, as stated, it is a more costly initial construction cost. Some of the things that are...
You mean replacement?
Next slide, please. The replacement option, thank you. The construction cost, as we noted, is higher, and that is something that has to be considered. But some of the pros that our committee thought were really important is all of the classrooms would be standard size. It's really important when you have a flexible classroom and you're integrating technology and a variety of learning modalities that you really want to have the right size classrooms, kindergarten classrooms with toilets, that sort of thing. So that would be possible in an all-new building. The seismic design would likely ensure safe exiting, and I'll disagree with you on this comment, it would preserve the building in the event of a catastrophic event. The plans for the new building, and one of the reasons I think it is expensive, is that it will be a steel structure and built in a very robust fashion and in fire-resistive materials. So very strong, very robust building. We think that it would provide shelter for the community in a post-earthquake event, and we hope that doesn't happen, but it seems to us that that could be an advantage. From a campus zoning perspective, and we look at this very much from the child and the family perspective, we have a contiguous central administration space right at the front door. There's very clear circulation and well-located support spaces such as bathrooms where they need to be. The library is right at the front door next to the main entrance and the new porch, and it would be accessible to the community in non-school hours. The kindergarten, as I pointed out before, is at the back of the campus or inside the campus off of the courtyard, which we think is a great place for those kids to be. And the location of the multi-use and kitchen is on the north side, so the delivery route is protected. The other thing, and I mentioned this more than once, is we will have full ADA access, but we think with the new building we can actually provide equal facilitation, which means able-bodied and people with disabilities can follow the same path. Next slide. The district is committed to the use of the correct use of resources, and the plan for this building is to be a net zero design, which means that we offset any of our energy consumption with energy production. So that is the goal of the project. No matter what happens, we are aware from our engineers that have helped us look at this and study this as part of the analysis. An existing building uses the most energy. A modernized building we could retrofit to use less energy, but a new building would consume the least amount of energy of the options. And lastly, just one note, and Tadashi mentioned this already, in both options, we will need to vacate the building. Students cannot stay in the building during construction. Both options will require interim housing, and both options will take about the same amount of time to construct. So we recognize there will be disruption, but at the end, everybody will say it was all worth it. So thank you.
So now we're entering the public comment portion of the evening. For those of you who weren't here earlier, the initial section of public comment will be reading from the cards that were submitted and collected from the audience. And then there will be open mic afterward where people can come and offer their personal thoughts directly or ask questions of the group here at the front. So just beginning with the card at the top. The first question for the panel is, how and when will the decision be made regarding whether to move forward with renovation versus replacement?
All right, so I covered that in the slide where we have the community meeting on May 1st, and that leads into the superintendent's recommendation to the board, prepared on May 7th and projected for the board meeting of May 28th. And that's the board meeting where we expect the decision to go with renovation or replacement.
The second question, why was reconstruction start year changed from June 2015 to June 2016?
So the original projection did not account for the full length of the design process and the DSA approval and this community input period that we're now engaging in.
Does renovation get the same results as a rebuild? Will we have the same amount of common space, classroom size, and other academic facilities?
Our goal will be to get them as close as possible, but if we use the existing structure, we know we will have some undersized classrooms, and they won't all be standard size. So we will try to achieve as much of the program as possible.
As I understand it, costs for both options, renovation is 2/3 the cost of a rebuild. Could seismic issues and other issues make costs to renovate higher?
I don't mind taking that. I will say this, that whenever we do renovation work, and in our office we do a lot of renovation work, we always carry much greater contingencies for renovation projects. There are simply many more unknowns that you have to be ready for, even if you can't fully anticipate them. So I think that's the answer.
Many families cannot get aftercare at Glenview. Will this improve under either option? How much space for aftercare will either offer?
So I really can't comment directly on aftercare. What I can say is that we are providing one more classroom-sized space in the new program than currently exists at the facility.
None of the presentations are speaking to or including the concerns of the homeowners/neighbors who live in close proximity to the school. Have you considered the concerns of the neighbors?
So we are definitely considering the concerns of the neighbors. The impact of the construction will be roughly similar with either option, and in any case, it is our responsibility to mitigate as much as physically feasible the impacts on neighboring houses and keep them from getting damaged.
As a parent on the core committee who lives in the neighborhood, we also have a next door neighbor to the school who's on the core committee. We understand that whichever process happens is going to be disruptive to people adjacent to the school. So it is a concern. Do you want to say something to her?
If you want to have comment on the neighbor, and come to me, we live right there. If you want to talk about maybe concerns, I'd be happy to hear it right there. Do you work on the project? What? Do you work on the project? I joined in on the core committee the last meeting, so I don't know if that's work.
Next question, related issue, but a little more specific. How will the work address residents and neighbors breathing of asbestos and other toxic substances that will certainly be released into the air?
Okay. Our responsibility is to totally abate all hazardous materials in the building before we demolish it or renovate it. This is a requirement of any public agency renovating or demolishing a building, and we're required to document that and provide air samples of that, the test results showing that there are no contamination or exposure.
Okay. More of a statement than a question, but have the people who are against replacing the school had a tour of the interior to see the problems? For example, too hot, rats, classrooms too small, horrible cafeteria. Okay. We'll move on to the next one. Can you adopt a deco design in a brand new building?
Before you move on, there's also a question in the back, too.
Well, we're going to have
If we could just reserve your question for the open mic session.
It was just a follow-up to the previous question, that's all.
Okay. I think just for the continuity, if you don't mind waiting just about 15 minutes. Thanks. So can you adopt a deco design to a brand new building?
I don't want to insult deco designers that came before us, so I wouldn't say that we would do exactly what an Art Deco designer from the 30s would do, but we could certainly use the pieces that are here as influences. And I saw some people kind of shaking their heads, but when we looked at just creating some imagery for the new building, one thought was we would want to use vertical elements and some decorative banding. So I would definitely say yes, we could look at those. I will share another thought, though, that when we talked about this with the core committee, when we were working on master plans, everybody wanted to be really careful that we didn't do a poor imitation. People don't want to create sort of a Disney effect and a fake Art Deco. So when I say I want to be really respectful, I would seriously mean that, and we wouldn't want to do a poor imitation.
Have demographic studies been done to show future school-age population of the Glenview School District? Past and future trends. What is the capacity for the new/remodeled building?
There is no detailed study of the Glenview attendance area by itself. We have overall district demographic studies that were prepared in support of the facilities master plan. And in regards to the capacity, it's simply that we're adding one classroom-sized room, but that isn't necessarily programmed as a classroom.
How will the construction affect La Cresta Avenue and Hempel in terms of noise, dust, street closures, etc.?
So there will definitely be impacts on both of the adjacent streets, as it's just unavoidable in terms of getting the demolition materials under either option out and the new materials in, as well as staging any prefabricated materials or material deliveries. There will be impacts, and will require the contractor to notify the neighbors and provide traffic control during those time periods.
We don't have enough space for enrichment classes. Teachers often need to use the room at the same time. Can this be considered for both options?
So we are providing additional storage space as part of the program. And as I say, there is the additional classroom size space, as well as a much larger central admin area to more properly support some of the programs that are distributed into the classrooms currently.
I feel that Glenview School is part of the history and heart of the Glenview district, just as the Paramount Theater is part of the heart of Oakland. If the original building can be renovated and brought up to current standards for $22 million, why can't a new cafeteria and offices be built with the remaining $5 million of the budget?
Feels like more of a statement than a question. I don't know.
Okay. How much time have architects spent on campus during the school day, including before and after school, to see how facilities are being used by students, teachers, and parents for drop-off and pickup, both on foot and by car? Handwriting is difficult, but I think it says, not enough access, play area, porch, etc. in conceptual plane. I'm not sure.
For the first part of the question, we've been here during morning drop-off and afternoon pickup. As a matter of fact, our meetings often start during afternoon pickup, so we've seen a lot of it, and it's actually beautifully handled with, I think Mr. Miller is often at the street corner, and thank you for that. And, you know, the sidewalks are used for drop-off and pickup, and they will continue to be used in the same fashion. In the schemes, we do intend to keep the stairways where they are now, and the circle feature, whether or not it will last construction or how it will be reconfigured remains to be seen, but we will have access ways, outdoor areas at the front of the campus, similar to what they are now, as well as a front porch. So the drop-off pickup remains the same, although with the new construction, there's a shift with more of the play area at the rear of the site, the inside court.
Has the more intensive seismic evaluation been done? What is the cost to make seismically safe?
I'm going to answer that question too. Yes, we have a structural engineer on board that has done a complete, well, I'll say a thorough analysis of the existing conditions, and that is what we use to figure out what the cost of renovation will be. So it's been looked at in a thorough fashion. It has not been designed so it could be constructed, so there's of course a next step to doing the analysis, and there would be another step if we involve the state in funding.
The next question is, when will you post technical studies, seismic, etc., and a request to please post agendas, materials, minutes from your year-long process? So as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, all the studies that we've done are currently posted on the website. So you can reach the OUSD website. There are a couple ways you can get there. / Glenview Reconstruction, once you reach the OUSD website, or you can go under the departmental section and select facilities. Within facilities, there's a whole subsection that's devoted to Glenview Reconstruction, and all the materials are posted there, including HKIT's presentation today. The only one that's not currently up there is Tadashi's presentation that we led with tonight, and that will be up within a matter of hours after this meeting concludes. We heard that Glenview was number 9 on the list. I believe they're referring to the list of schools most urgently in need of some sort of repair or renovation. Have the 8 schools before it been addressed?
So I think on one of the lists of the 2004 master plan that supported the Measure B bond campaign, it was listed as number 9 on one of those lists. I honestly can't tell you if the 8 sites before that were addressed or not. Just over the life of any master plan and any bond campaign and any capital program that follows that, the district's priorities change over time, and it's just whatever the board directs as the top priority at that time that gets addressed, and not necessarily what was on the list in any one master plan.
Has HKIT done adaptive reuse projects? If so, what are examples? And secondly, what will the board be approving on May 17th? The concept or the design?
Our firm has a number of parts to it. We do a lot of school work. We also do housing and some municipal work. In the school work we've done many modernization projects. So this involves taking an existing building and renovating it. Sometimes we gut the inside of the building, sometimes we keep a lot of it, and we've done a lot of infill where we add to existing buildings. So that in the school realm, we've done a lot of modernization and renovation work. In our housing side, we have done some actual, I would call it restoration. It is not our what we do frequently, but we've taken existing buildings and turned a church into low-cost senior housing in San Francisco, and we have done an occasional restoration project in the city for churches in particular.
We may have addressed this question already in part, but How many students are scheduled to attend?
Sorry, Troy, so the second part of that question is what will the superintendent's recommendation be encompassing and what will the board approve? And that is simply, it will simply be a recommendation from the superintendent as to whether to renovate or replace, and there will probably be no plans attached to that because the design has not been completed yet.
How many students are scheduled to attend Glenview following construction? What class size in terms of number of students is this projection based on?
So that there is a capacity that's part of the Glenview master plan document, but class sizes change over time. They're changing currently across the state under the new state funding formula. So we could give you an answer as it stands now, but that would be no guarantee as to what the capacity enrollment would be at the time the school reopens.
Is the district planning to include or share the Glenview campus or other schools with charter schools? The board is voting tonight to share traditional schools and with extra space with charter schools.
So what that's referring to is every year the district is required to allocate space to charters that apply for space in our facilities. That space that is offered to charters is at sites where we have space for them available. Glenview is not one of those sites where there is space available. So unless there is a severe drop-off in student population at Glenview, there will not be a charter at Glenview.
How safe is the building right now if an earthquake were to occur? How safe are homes in the neighborhood being on the fault line?
I don't think anybody on this panel is qualified to talk about how safe this building is, and certainly not qualified to talk about how safe the houses are in the neighborhood.
Will classrooms in the new building be better equipped for teaching and learning than a restored building? If so, how?
I think in every scheme we would strive to make them great classrooms, 21st century learning environments. I think the difference would be in an existing structure, we would be using existing window openings, and those may or may not be ideal for natural lighting and the control of glare in particular. And then the other thing that I've mentioned before is some of the classrooms are undersized, so we would have undersized classrooms for some of the students.
Considering that this project is estimated to cost between $22 and $25 million, and the reuse, addition, modernization cost is within 2.7% of the 2/3 cost of new within the margin of estimating error, would not the greenest and most culturally and economic solution be to save this building? What is the lifespan of the remodeled addition building, and what is the lifespan of the new building? Estimated, of course.
I am going to waive on this question because I'm not a life cycle cost analysis person, but I do know that the new building would have a steel frame and would most likely be a little more rigid and fire resistive. But that's the extent of my expertise to answer that question.
Can you speak about student flow inside the building? For example, first and second graders on a second floor.
You must be getting tired of hearing from me. By state code, first and second graders need to be on the ground floor and have exiting to the outside, not direct. They can go through a corridor. The only exception, and you do see this, is we can put first and second graders on a second floor, but when we do that, they need their own stairway. They need a designated stairway, and then they need 2 designated stairways. So it's a safety issue that stems from not wanting to have children trampled.
What about the suggestion to preserve just the essential culturally significant parts of the buildings?
I'm going to attempt to answer that really honestly. I think that if we were going to keep the existing building, which we've shown you an option for doing, we would be keeping the existing building, period. We would take away a lot of the framing and remodel it. At this point, we have not explored an option which may be at the heart of the question, that you simply keep a facade and remove everything behind it. That has not been considered, and we weren't asked to consider that. So it has.
Well, I think that's not a question for the architect. I think that's a question for us to ask the school. You know, I think that's what we would like to ask.
Okay, we'll have that opportunity shortly. So the last question was, will the OUSD consider adaptive reuse? I think we already touched on that. So now for the second portion of public comment, if you would line up, and please try and keep your comments and questions within 2 minutes. We'll be flexible, but we would like to respect everyone's time.
I'm Elton Jelks, and I'm working with a number of folks who are very interested in the renovation, reuse, whatever term that is appropriate. And we were very glad to see Naomi and Mr. Harrison come tonight, because they spoke to this issue better actually than we could, and we do want to incorporate their thoughts and points of view into what we want to present. We agree that we don't want to draw lines in the sand. This is a very complex issue, and there's a lot of decisions to be made, and there's probably going to have to be trade-offs. But I think a lot of us have worked within bureaucratic settings before. Creativity, even among architects in your architectural endeavors, creativity fights to get in. And everything I read in school districts across the country that have renovated rather than raised, they point out that it was those creative sessions where they looked at the options that apparently no one asked you to look at, that they looked at those options and saw things that were not apparent early on. And I think that's, from the beginning, the effort that we would like to see made. You talk about a decision being made in a matter of weeks as to whether it's going to be. That's either too soon, or the real intensive creative effort hasn't been and now has to be made. So our group's going to be really looking at this to kind of refine what we can in terms of what's the best way to present the renovation argument so that we can make this a truly wonderful place for teachers and for parents and for students, and is equally important for this community and the traditions that this school is such an important part of. So we're going to be working on that, and we hope to be able to get back to you. And again, let's try to be as creative and as vigorously creative as we can, and looking for those options. Thank you.
Hello. This school was made during a completely different era where there was probably a lot more stay-at-home parents, a lot less commuting. Today, there's much different demands, especially with traffic. Have you guys considered that the school is in the middle of a neighborhood? And now that I've heard mention of making this more of a community center, that alarms me as a neighbor. What sort of considerations have you made in terms of modern traffic patterns and parking, etc.?
So we haven't actually considered anything beyond the property line in terms of the impacts on the neighborhood. So that would involve conversations with city planning and city traffic, and we haven't approached them yet about that.
I would definitely like to see more looking into the, what was mentioned about keeping the facade of the building and then being able to rework the inside of the building so you can have larger classrooms and better traffic flow. And that seems that hasn't really been on the table yet, and I'd like to see that be looked into. And the next meeting is scheduled for May 1st with recommendations for board action on 5/17 and then Oakland Unified School District board action on 5/28. That seems like it might be pretty aggressive timing given the fact that this option to look into a different way to retain the facade of the building and the renovation, I don't know if that's a timetable that you can meet.
I was wondering if you could speak to how and when the district will decide where Glenview students will be placed during construction.
We will be looking at the alternatives for the interim housing once we've made the decision about whether to renovate or replace. And so as Will mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we'll be forming an interim housing committee as well, because that's actually more than the core committee can take on by themselves, because it is a pretty intense decision and issue by itself.
I just think that the prior question to that about the timeline and moving forward to the board, I think it deserves some comment. And let me introduce myself. I'm Lance Jackson. I'm with a company called SGI. We're the bond program managers. We're here to help implement the process of planning and construction. And I have a lot of history in the area, over a decade and over almost $1 billion worth of work in communities adjacent to Oakland. We've been here for 2 years. But I just want to caution, of course we're here to engage the community, and we're gathering all the facts and hearing what's important and what's not. And yes, there was a straw man sort of timeline put up there. And you know, if we extend the process, and for good reason, you know, to get all the necessary data, just know that it also extends the end date too. So, you know, you really can't have both. And I think that's the one thing I want to put out there on the floor tonight.
My name.
Ladies first, right?
Lady. Oh, hi. Okay, so I'm given to understand that you haven't done any demographic studies or projections. My understanding is that at one time there were 55,000 students in the Oakland School District, and now there's more like 37,000. So there's big demographic changes happening, and I think that's a really important piece of data that we need to have before we start designing a new or remodeled school. I mean, how big does this school have to be? How many students will need to be here? I think we need to know that.
So again, we have done demographic studies for the entire district, not just for the Glenview detail. Then the other point I want to make about the drop-off in OUSD students is that there has been almost as many students going into charters as have left OUSD, so the total student population in Oakland actually hasn't dropped that much.
I do want to add that my name is Jeanette Hernandez, and I'm the Regional Executive Officer, and so one of the things I do is supervise the principal and support the school here. And I do want to say over the last maybe 5 to 6 years, the enrollment has increased tremendously here at Glenview due to the improvement in quality programs. And so many kids were coming and staying till 3rd grade and leaving. in 4th and 5th grade to go to private schools, and now more and more kids are staying, and more families are moving into this neighborhood to come to Glenview. It's a highly desirable school. There's a huge waiting list. There was a talk a couple years ago, maybe some of you there, talking about Glenview becoming a K-8 school. And, you know, the issue was it only really holds 450 students. So I'm sure if we made a school for 800 students, we'd get 800 kids here. So it is high demand, and I doubt in the near future that enrollment is going to drop here at Glenview.
Again, as a parent, that's also been a concern over the years, and we've tracked it, you know, inside or asked questions of our principals, plural, and Rexos, and exactly what Jeanette said. It's been difficult to project numbers, as I understand it. When I've also been on the school site council in the past, because third grade has typically been a dropping off point. That is, people would leave Glenview, and that's not just here at Glenview, but at many elementary schools, and go on either to private or charter or move out of Oakland altogether. That's been happening less and less. So the district has often used previous years only to find out that those previous years have changed. So it's like catching a moving target. It's extremely hard to do. And I've shared some of the same concerns for different reasons that you mentioned. But the district has to deal with that because then they have capacity issues and classroom size issues. So I understand your question, just to give you some more information.
My name's Charles Bucher. I'm with the the board of the Oakland Heritage Alliance, and we're pretty concerned about the way that you're moving forward with the timeline of making a decision on this, whether to renovate or to build a new building. We have concern that there hasn't been enough CEQA consideration on this. We realize that the historic nature of the building is one of the parts to be considered for the California Environmental Quality Act reviews, and we've had some contact with members of the school district to see if there was any CEQA forms or considerations made, and have not gotten any answers from you. Hopefully that'll come into consideration.
Hi, I just wanted to speak from a parent perspective. I have a kindergartner here and a younger child who will be starting in year after next. Sorry. Is there did you have an answer?
Just to simply say that we will be addressing the CEQA issue in the coming week here.
What is CEQA?
The California Environmental Quality Act.
Okay, sorry, I'm just speaking as a parent. I see a lot of community members have some concerns about the project, and you know that's great that everyone can participate and can be engaged in the project, but let us not forget that the school is not a museum. This is a school, and its function is to educate our children. And let me just say, I love this school. I love this school like I can't even believe it, but the school is not the building. The school are the teachers, the principal, the children, the parents. This is an incredible learning environment, and I'm so proud to be part of it. And I want what's best for my children. I want a safe school. I want one that can give them the opportunities that they deserve in the 21st century, and however that can happen in the best way is what interests me. If that can happen while still integrating some of the design elements, that's great. I used to be a real vintage girl. So I appreciate the beauty of historic architecture, but first and foremost, this is a school, and the most important thing is that it meets the needs of our children. And I think that the parents, for the most part, are behind the project for that reason, and they should be heard as well.
there comment to be made for that? Yeah, well, I think that an argument could be made for that we could achieve all that she's asking for, no matter which direction we go. What I'm wondering is we're all presenting our cases here. We have different points of view. And you say that a decision is going to be made within the next couple of months with a recommendation made. I'd like to know what are the criteria going to be to determine that decision? You know, we're each bringing forth, you know, reasons to go one way or the other, but what is that decision going to be made upon?
I'll take a stab. So I don't think it'll be vastly different from what you're seeing here. You know, so there's two scenarios. We have to present the case to the decision makers that are at a pay grade above us, which is the superintendent and ultimately the board. So there'll be a document prepared, but I'm sure there'll be a session with the superintendent and cabinet members and say, this is where we are with this project, and we think that the delta between the two projects happens to be, I think it was $6 million. But here are the costs and the benefits as we now analyze them, and here's the sacrifices as a result of either one of those scenarios, and a document will be brought forward to the board with a recommendation for them to vote up or down. Whether or not they bring both options for the board to ultimately decide is yet to be seen. I think what I know about Oakland is, and their board, they're community-centric. They're trying to build community schools. We're here tonight because you have the opportunity to be heard because you are the community, you are the schools. So to the best of our ability, we have captured everything that has been said tonight. Is being tape recorded so that there won't be any loss in the bandwidth of what you presented as a community, but ultimately there's a hard, tough decision that has to be made for the sake of progress. And at some point, you know, because we can keep cutting bait or we can fish, because eventually we have to address the fact that, yes, this is a building that has been deemed by people with more knowledge than us that is seismically unsafe. So we have the obligation, given that the taxpayers have voted $475 million worth of bonds, we can't sit idly by and because we don't know when that next thing might happen. And so, yes, there's some tough choices, and I want to remind us this is a good democratic process, and you know, nothing's stopping you from being heard at the board level, but at the end of the day, I would hope that some decision be made and so that we can move forward in the direction that's good for the community in both, either one is good for the community. I think it addresses different needs and different dynamics, and we've heard all the different arguments for which one should go forward, but I would hope that you support going forward.
So I'm a parent. I have two children here at Glenview Elementary. I'm a homeowner. I live a couple blocks away. District 5 voter. I voted for Councilman Gallo and would do so again. Thank you for being here. I also voted for your successor, Rosie Torres. And I voted for Measure J. I put a sign in my yard. And I very, very strongly was in support of Measure J. Earlier this evening, we heard, of course, the number, $475 million was the total amount of Measure J for school improvements. That's great. Taxpayers of Oakland and the voters stepped up. I think we also heard that there's about $1.5 billion in total need in the district. That's a huge number. I think we also heard that these two options, retrofit and renovate the current facility, and also tearing down and building new, both would meet this building program more or less. There's some differences, but the seismic safety, which was one of the big concerns, would be addressed either way. We also heard that there is about a $5, maybe $6 million difference between the two costs, with renovation being less. So, when I hear that there is $1 billion in capital needs out there that are unfunded, and a decision to, spend $5 million or $6 million more than we have to I have to ask the question why, and then if that is what happens, and that $5 million is no longer available for some of those other needs that are out there, I have to think, if I were to go back in my time machine, and I'm there casting my vote for Measure J, how would I vote? So, that's my comments. I do appreciate this process. I'm glad that there's an opportunity for folks to, say what they think. I do think the timeline is a concern, and, that's pretty much what I have to say. Thank you.
Actually, I'm just new on the committee, and I have a question for the gentleman from the Oakland Heritage Alliance. It was said that the timing for making the decision is very short, and I kind of don't understand why. And I would like to, for the purpose of the committee that we're sitting on, I would like to have something in writing to explain why you consider that timing to be too short. And then my second comment is I want to share a personal experience with you. I lived in Chicago for many years, and there's a great building there. It's called Soldier Field, in which what they did is they preserved the facade and built a new stadium. So I just want to share that. It's personal to me. I mean, everybody has an opinion, so go look at that building and see if you like it. Thank you.
Well, the reason I said that the timing was short was because they said it themselves. They're having one more meeting, and then on May 17th, the superintendent is going to give the recommendations whether to decide on renovation or rebuilding the building, and then after that it goes to the school board, so that's pretty short time.
I think some of us may be asking that question. I'm Marie Munson. I'm a resident of Glenview, and I have a specific question about the EIR. You said that the CEQA process was going to be decided in a week. Is an EIR required? Does CEQA apply? I know you don't go through the local planning in the city of Oakland, you go through the state, but are you subject to CEQA?
So we are subject to CEQA. The project parameters itself are in what category? It's categorically exempt by legislation. The issue that we'll be addressing within the week is the issue of whether the historical resource issue needs to be addressed as part of that negative declaration.
So it's categorically exempt. So you can do a neg deck, but you're deciding.
No, it's not a negative declaration. It's a categorical exemption.
Okay. So meaning it doesn't apply.
Right.
Okay. Right. But then you're looking at the historic aspect.
That's correct.
And who makes that decision? Is that the board or superintendent, or is that you staff? Who makes that decision? And then does it go to the state for review?
Well, so the negative declaration does need to be reviewed by the state, and that's part of what we're reviewing, the historical resource aspect of that, to make sure that we would pass the state review.
Okay, thanks. And just a broader, my broader question, and I guess our maybe point, is that we're talking about time frame, and you're talking about we can't have it both ways. But I think some of us are frustrated because there's been a process that's been going on for a year and a half, and we just found out about this in January. So it's give us some time to catch up. It hasn't even been 3 months yet, and we're trying to understand this. And I feel like we have this polarization between, renovation or new construction, but I would hope we could consider the third option, and that would be the adaptive reuse that we heard about tonight, which sounds so compelling. And I would like to know if the architectural firm, and I understand they have a scope of work, and you mentioned it wasn't in your scope, you weren't asked to look at that. How long, if we were to ask the architectural firm, if you took some of that $6 million allocation that was, could we set aside whatever it would take to ask them to look at a third option, kind of the blend, the adaptive reuse? How much would that put your schedule back?
So I just want to point out that a large percentage of adaptive reuses are for different occupancies than what the buildings were originally designed for, and even the ones that have the same occupancy as what the building was originally designed for generally have budgets that far exceed anything that we've contemplated to this point. So It's not to say that we can't look at that or won't look at that, but I'm just want to point that out.
So you're saying to gut the building and save the shell, it'd be a lot more expensive than, could I have the architect address that?
I actually can't answer that question, but I would agree with what Tadashi said, that generally adaptive reuse type projects are more expensive, but that would take I would take analysis and design to determine actual costs and cost estimating, and I wouldn't want to answer that on the fly.
And even if, I mean, are you saying the shell, or even if the facade was saved, it's going to cost that much more?
I'd just like to say there's no way we're going to leave here tonight without analyzing the numbers and seeing why it is that we arrive at the delta that we do. The reason why, when you first used the term adaptive reuse, and I had somewhat of a scowl because I felt like that was a misnomer tonight. For an adaptive reuse is to take a building and to use it for something that it wasn't, which the Fox Theater became what it became. And, it became Whole Foods, the other building that was mentioned. When we decided to renovate this building, we have to comply with the codes that are dictated to us by the State Architects Department, and mainly the seismic issues will have to be addressed, and how we treat the facade will be dictated to us by them, mostly, through the work done by the structural engineers. So it's not like we have not considered wanting to use, because, you might hear a twang in my voice. I'm from a place that has old buildings, and I did appreciate it when I first saw the presentation by the architect. I said, they're going to let us tear it down. Well, we had to do a professional job. You have to do the cost-benefit analysis. So you say, well, what does it take to treat this particular project according to the programmatic educational process that needs to go on here, given the codes that are required to be complied with? So how does that pencil out? And then how does it pencil out against a brand new school? And that's how we arrived at the two options, I'm pretty sure. It's not like we're not considerate of...
Can I just say, though, maybe I'm using a misnomer about adaptive reuse. What I keep hearing about the renovation is that, well, the school, the classrooms are going to have to be the same size and they're not large enough. It seems like there would be something, that it doesn't have to be this end or that end. And I have asked for your cost analysis. I haven't seen those. And also I wanted to know, what's the fiscal impact? Are there fundings? Are there grants for renovation? Are there, what are the grants that you anticipate for new construction? So it's like, I feel like, again, we're trying to come up to speed, with information and digest it. But I would hope that you would consider that a third alternative.
Cost-benefit analysis is not a place where you find creativity. It's a black or white, and either and or, it's a bunch of number crunching. If you want a creative experience, put the cost crunching aside for a moment, take a look at these options, and then get creative, and then do the number crunching.
I feel like I'm just commenting now. So.
Right, and I just want to address the fact that, your frustration, we hear it, and we had to start somewhere, right? I mean, we had to start this project and move it forward, and the feedback that I'm hearing from this group tonight is that, hey, did we use the best parts of our brain to come up with this solution? And, I'm pretty certain that we did, but we don't know everything, and we're not here representing that we know everything. We're here to say that there was a process, and we arrived at two scenarios, and here are the costs of those two scenarios. And, again, I remained silent for most of the meeting, and I was cringing a little bit when they said, hey, everything is same timeline exactly. I'm here to tell you the only thing I've ever done in my life, in my professional career, is construction. And it's a tough project to take on a building and renovate it, whether or not it has historic elements or not. Then you add another level of complexity. And we're not running from a hard project. That's not what I do. I actually love construction. But, to say that they're not compromises, if you're working with an existing shell and you have certain elements you need to put into it, you're going to have to compromise in lieu of starting with a clean palette. Or you're compromising anyway, but you're compromising based on the terrain of the overall site.
Can I agree completely with that last statement. I just wanted to clarify a couple of points. there seems to be the misinformation that seismic upgrade to code on an existing building is substandard and not as good as a new construction. That's absolutely not true. I think we have forgotten that the White House was gutted completely in the 1940s, and there are famous photographs of bulldozers in the basement on the dirt and 4 brick walls. And I don't think school children are endangered walking through those hallowed halls. I don't think so at all. So it's misinformation, and I think it's based on, we need to look with imagination. No one wants our children to be unsafe. We don't want them in crowded classrooms. None of us want that. But the idea that we're not looking intelligently and with imagination at other ways of doing it, I think is sort of crippling. And I think we need to stretch ourselves just a bit. But let's set that aside. There should be absolutely no difference in seismic safety with either plan. There shouldn't be. Am I wrong on that? If the engineering is done correctly, if the seismic
all I
solution
can
is
say
correct?
is that the structural engineer that the district is using for our overall seismic program is one of the top advisors to the state school construction program, and what he has told us about the level of seismic safety of the renovation project versus the new project is, it basically comes down to the new construction project has a much better chance of remaining in a usable condition after a major seismic event than the renovated facility
Perhaps you should talk to another structural engineer. I spent some time at the last meeting talking with him. These concrete walls are probably in very good construction. The floors that connect to them are wood. There's a problem right there.
Right.
Is there a solution in there? Is there an inventive solution? There are an infinite number of solutions. All that we're saying here is, can we take a look at some of those? I think we've not stretched enough to say, what's good that we can salvage and pass down to our children? Give them this lesson. This is good. We're saving our culture. Are we making it safe for you? Absolutely. That's the first requirement. Are we making it a happy and a wonderful environment? Can we change the size of a classroom within an existing shell? Absolutely. I asked the architect, could a more inventive design solution exist in anyone's imagination that would satisfy a bigger list of pros than your presentation? Is it possible? Is it conceivable? Yes or no?
May I take it? May I?
Thank you.
I would like to just say, again, I'm not going to take the yes or no question, but I'm going to say that I don't think any of the energy spent here is wasted. I think we're taking back all the information that you have brought to us, and I don't know that a decision will be made tonight to change the timeline, but I know that we presented you with our plan. You've rebuffed some of our plan. Now we have to huddle and make some decisions.
I just want to say I really feel for you up there, all of you. And I also want to say I've learned a lot tonight from all of you, representing all opinions. I'm really glad I came. I am a parent of an incoming kindergartner. I've had 2 other children attend Glenview starting in 2003. Mm-hmm. I was here when the Earthquake Safety Committee was formed and little backpacks were prepared and the new shed was built to store everything. And I've been concerned about the safety of this building from the get-go. I see 1926 written on it, and I've always wondered, boy, we're preparing backpacks and water and all of that, but is the building going to crumble on our children? So it's definitely been something important to me and on my mind as long as I've been here. I understand the need for dialogue. I understand the need to explore every option. I appreciate the options that are being presented. I also know that this is a bureaucratic process, and I've seen it time and time again, where first we're delaying it for 6 months, then it's, wow, it's been a year, and there's still no movement. Wow, it's been 2 years, and there's still no movement. That's my concern. My concern is that bottom line, I want my child safe here, and I want him to be the safest the safest. My vote, if I were to vote, is just to say, whatever you can do that is the soonest and the safest is what I want. And I would say, and I will be bold to say this, I would bet that if all the parents that send their children here now were to take a vote, that's what they would say, the majority. Because I think every person who has a young child going to the school wants their kids to be the safest and the soonest. Just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Johanna. She's one of the neighborhood heroes. They're very responsible for the lower yards. So thank you. And thank you for that statement, because I think a lot of what's missing is that this is a school, and that's its priority. So we should consider that. On that note, I wanted to make sure if you guys are comfortable with being online and continuing the conversation, please come to I have a Facebook page. It's called Facebook/Glenview Construction. That's a good place. If you're not a Facebook user, you'll still be able to view the information on there, which would take you to a wiki page, which I'm updating with all the documentation that I get. And also, since I'm part of the committee, I'm going to represent the neighbors. So if you have any grievances, that's my job now. So please, and working online works for me because I could check in the middle of the day online. So Facebook.com. www.facebook.com/Glenview Construction. I had to rename it because it was originally Glenview Renovation, but that had a little bit more meaning to it. So I'm trying to keep it agnostic. I agree with Johanna. I think it's, even as a neighbor, there's going to be a certain heck to pay for being a neighbor, but I'm motivated to try to keep the kids safe, and that's the most important thing. And people need to be reminded of that.
Yeah, hi. I just want to add one more thing. I mean, I have a big stake in this too because I'm a neighbor. In fact, I live just a house down from Eric, so I'm very, very close to the building and will obviously experience a lot of, what will entail, from this project. And I also have a grandchild here with another one slated to come within next year. So yeah, I have a stake here. But the thing that and I've worked on a lot of building projects myself. And, it does seem to me that what we have come up, sort of seen tonight is that we can accomplish a lot of the same things in terms of learning environment and safety and fitting into the community, or maybe not so much fitting into the community, but at least we can address the needs of our students and our teachers, et cetera, whether we go with one option or the other. Because I do feel that, we can do, what people have said, things aren't still, they aren't in stone yet, and they can be still adapted maybe to meet better the needs of our teachers and students in terms of size of classrooms, et cetera, even if we do the renovation. However, I know that the district has already made the recommendation to new construction. I mean, that was in the plan. It said that the district favored that option. So what I guess I'm asking is then, if those of us who favor renovation are up against a district who has perhaps already made up their mind for new construction, what do we have to do to convince you, the district, that renovation is a better option?
I'm not afraid to stay neutral, but yet say.
I don't want an answer.
Right, and
I think
again,
this is an important question.
Right, and just know that even though Tadashi is director of facilities and Tim White wasn't able to be here, that's why I'm sitting in for him. Ultimately, the vote on that comes at a board level, and so we have our recommendations, and staff probably has a history of You know, we thought we were making a proper recommendation, and we thought we had the pulse of the community, and you bring something and it gets voted on a different way. Ultimately, yes, maybe in the documents that you've seen, there's a leaning, but we know who we serve. We serve at the pleasure of the board and somewhat the pleasure of the community through the board, right? And so when that decision is made, we will move forward with the direction given. So convincing us, I'm not sure if that's where the energy is spent, and I'm not sure if you can, it's a foregone conclusion. We're trying to tell you this is the process and where we are in the process, and we're hearing you. That's part of the process.
Right, but what value then has our input in this process? That's what I'm asking.
Well, are there going to be minutes published tonight?
We're not taking minutes, but the reason why we're videotaping is so we can post this on YouTube as well as on our page. But again, I think Tadashi covered this, and also some of the other people did as well. Ultimately, the current leaning was toward the new construction, but we have not presented a formal presentation to the superintendent. Really, the superintendent at this stage is probably not that engaged in this issue. He has 86 schools to deal with, and that's not a slight against Glenview, but it's just to put in perspective that while this is a seminal issue for all the people in this room, it's one of many that he's dealing with. So I can assure you that the superintendent has not made up his mind on this issue and probably has not even examined it in detail. So there is ample opportunity both to influence the person who's offering the formal recommendation as a superintendent, as well as the board members, 7 of them, who will have to make the vote. So there's certainly opportunity for the voices to be expressed and for any partial opinions that have been developed to be changed before they're set in cement.
So I'm a parent here at Glenview, and I've been a homeowner for a decade in Glenview, and I was also on that core committee that met with the architects, OUSD, faculty administration for that year-long project. And one of the things that kept coming up from the administration side and from the teachers was the flow of the students and how the grade levels were grouped together. And it is for both safety as well as for educational purposes, so that same grades could collaborate with one another. And as we understood it, as the designs were presented and discussed, was that with a remodel, there would be compromises on that, because the classrooms would remain size-wise as they are, despite our classrooms having gone from 24 kids in a class to 31 kids. My son is now in 4th grade. That's quite significant. And there would be limitations to just expanding the number of usable spaces. And so the rebuilding seemed, for the sake of our children, for safety and for learning purposes, to be the better answer. And I've heard tonight people asking for more time, for the district not to make a decision in several weeks. Granted, last month when they held this meeting, the district acknowledged that they should have reached out to the community sooner. But in terms of making a decision, the decision is not going to be made in several weeks, because the decision making has been going on for an extremely long time. And one thing, if we are talking about the children, the students, being the clients, the most important factor in all of this, we have to consider, as we continue to push back the timeline, how many incoming students, how many current students will leave Glenview and leave to either go option into another OUSD school or to leave entirely. And I think that that's a huge thing that needs to be factored into all of this, because one of the beauties of Glenview is it's a community. That's what you hear from current families. That's what you hear from incoming families talking about how they've heard it's a community. And if we're going to retain that community, we have to work really hard not to lose the future families coming in who get frustrated and say, okay, we thought this was going to happen in a year, now it's 2 years, is it going to be longer than that? And how long does that go on for? And I just would hope that everyone keeps in mind, it's about the children, it's the safety, it's the health, and it's for the best educational environment possible. Thank you.
Thank you. And final remarks from the gentleman who's been very patient. I appreciate that.
Thank you. So, we've only lived here since the early 70s, but this is a follow-up question. Yeah, 1970, somewhere around. Anyway, it's not important. This is a question I want to ask on behalf of Eric and James and Gary and Steve and Mrs. Bledsoe, Mel Bledsoe's wife, and Kim, who has 2 small children. I have 2 small children. It's a follow-up question to the asbestos question and the toxic substances question that I just want to ask if you can tell me more specifically what process you would undertake to transport those substances to make sure that nothing is released into the air. Would under both options, is the building going to be completely contained, and then once material falls to the earth, is it then going to be somehow contained from there into the truck so that nothing escapes in that process? Can you just explain to us a little bit more about what happened there? Thank you.
So under either extensive renovation or replacement, we're required to survey all the materials in the building to document where the hazardous materials are. So if the paint is lead containing, or there's asbestos insulation on the pipes, or asbestos in any of the building components, we're required to document that and test that. And then before the main demolition of the building starts, we're required to remove all those materials under containment. So that's under negative air. It's fully contained. It is contained from the time it is removed from the building to when it is placed in bags that are sealed and trucked off to a hazardous dump facility. So there is, in the whole procedure, it is designed to have no release of the contaminated or hazardous materials.
Cradle to grave.
Right. That's correct.
I think closer to when that process happens, whichever option, we might have to discuss with the district having a committee of neighbors, in addition. But I wanted to talk, piggyback on what Sherry and Joanna said, and that is that as a parent here who has been involved with the process, I'm kind of mad at the district for not reaching out earlier to the community as well, because it's pushed the whole process back farther. And I mentioned to them a little while ago, about this internally, and the project manager who was on the case at the time was, more recently removed. But we can't push this on forever to accommodate everyone, or the meetings will be perpetual. They'll never end. The district already moved the timeline back a year. And in a way, I don't understand why, even if if the process and the decision is made in May, or even if it's bumped a month or two, I don't understand, wherever it results, why it was bumped automatically back to 2016. And as far as the Art Deco Society is concerned, and some of the other historical, some of you seem to be advocating for the preservation of the entire building, and some for just the facade. In a way, I wouldn't mind seeing the proposal for just the facade, but you're also, adoptive, being integrated into adoptive reuse and whatnot, but you're arguing from 2 different perspectives. The building itself, from a parent's perspective, beyond the facade, is glued together over different eras and different periods that add safety issues, number one, and number two, that isn't that special. This room is not that special, and if you keep pushing it back farther, okay, we could find ourselves in a real seismic challenge and compromise. There was a KQED program 2 years ago about the safety of our schools and what a poor job the California State Architect's Office has done in the state of California. And we're actually doing something, it was called On Shaky Grounds. You can look it up on KQED and listen to how it's alarming as a parent, as anybody. And if you push it back forever, we could have a disaster here. So at some point we need to see some progress and move it forwards. And I would really personally, and I've heard this from other parents, I would like to see whatever the decision that's made, that the timeline gets moved back forwards to 2015 again, because otherwise we're going to have a whole new crop of parents coming in who aren't going to know anything about it, new neighbors who are going to, and it could push it off farther.
Thanks. Some last items. Please visit the website at Glenview Reconstruction, or you can also access it through the OUSD main website if you'd like to get more materials. We are going to be probably in the next week after we edit this video, putting it online. So if you want to review that either at YouTube or at the district website, you can go back and look at what happened as well and share that with friends. My contact information in the communications department as Troy Flynn is available on the website, and also Will Newby, the project manager for Glenview, his contact information is there as well, and we encourage you to reach out to us if you have any questions.
One quick thing, we have one fabulous custodian, Mr. Brown, in the back, and he is not going to be here much longer tonight. If everyone can help out Mr. Brown by packing up the chairs, it will make everyone's life a lot easier, especially Mr. Brown's.